Sit back, relax, and welcome to Reading Hours. Today's book is Call Me by Your Name by André Aciman. Please let us know in the comments from where you are watching, or if there is a book you want us to summarize in future. Some stories capture a moment in time so vividly, so intimately, that they feel like a memory, one we may have never lived ourselves, yet one that lingers as though it belongs to us. Call Me by Your Name by André Aciman is one such novel, a deeply evocative tale of first love, longing, and the fragile, fleeting nature of time. Set against the sun-drenched backdrop of 1980s Italy, the novel immerses us in the life of Elio Perlman, a 17-year-old boy spending the summer at his family's villa, where he finds himself irresistibly drawn to Oliver, a 24-year-old American scholar staying with them. From its very first pages, Aciman's novel is less concerned with plot and more with sensation, with the unspoken tensions, the private obsessions, and the quiet devastation of love that is at once profound and impermanent. The book moves like a dream, shifting between Elio's desires and fears, his intellectual and emotional awakenings, and the way time distorts everything, making some moments feel infinite, while others slip away too quickly. Published in 2007, Call Me by Your Name quickly became a modern classic, celebrated for its lyrical prose and its ability to capture the complexities of passion, identity, and the pain of love that cannot last. The novel was later adapted into an Academy Award-winning film, directed by Luca Guadagnino, bringing Elio and Oliver's story to an even wider audience. But while the film beautifully captures the visual and emotional essence of the novel, Aciman's writing offers a deeper, more introspective experience, one that delves into the mind of its protagonist with raw intensity. What makes Call Me by Your Name so compelling is not just its portrayal of desire, but the way it explores memory itself, how love, no matter how brief, imprints itself on us, shaping who we are long after it has passed. Through Elio's eyes, we relive every touch, every glance, every unspoken word. And in doing so, we are reminded of our own past loves, our own what-ifs and what could-have-beens. In this detailed summary, we will take a journey through the novel in 10 parts, immersing ourselves in Aciman's world, experiencing Elio's thoughts and emotions as if they were our own. As we begin, we must remember, this is not just a love story. It is a meditation on time, on desire, on the pain and beauty of knowing that some loves are meant to change us, but not to stay. Summer in northern Italy moves at its own rhythm, slow, sun-soaked, and heavy with the scent of apricots and salt water. For 17-year-old Elio Perlman, these summers follow a familiar pattern. Each year, his parents open their villa to a visiting scholar, someone his father, a professor of classical studies, has invited to stay and work on a manuscript. The guests arrive, they settle into the old stone house, and Elio, a prodigious but restless teenager, watches from the periphery, lending his occasional assistance while remaining largely indifferent. But this summer is different. The moment Oliver arrives, Elio senses something shift. He is 24, American, and radiates a kind of effortless confidence and ease with himself that Elio finds at once infuriating and intoxicating. He steps out of the taxi wearing a billowy blue shirt, sunglasses perched lazily on his nose, his very presence disrupting the stillness of the villa. As he extends a casual handshake, his first words are almost dismissive later. It is a throwaway remark, an Americanism that means nothing and everything, and Elio, without fully understanding why, is already fixated on him. Oliver is unlike any of the scholars who have stayed with them before. He moves with a self-assurance that both fascinates and unsettles Elio. While the others were studious, methodical, and careful in their presence, Oliver is spontaneous, exuding a kind of magnetic energy. He is here to work on a book, to study under Elio's father, but he doesn't seem weighed down by academic pretensions. He swims in the mornings, reads on the balcony, takes long walks through the piazza, and speaks with a charm that makes even the simplest exchanges feel charged with something more. Elio, in contrast, is self-conscious, intellectual, and constantly lost in his own thoughts. He is precocious, musically gifted, and fluent in multiple languages. Yet there is a part of him that remains hesitant, an observer rather than a participant in his own life. Oliver's presence unsettles him because he represents something Elio does not yet understand, a way of being that is completely unburdened by doubt. At first, Elio reacts to Oliver with resistance. He finds him arrogant, almost inconsiderate. When Oliver spends hours away from the house without explanation, Elio feels slighted. When Oliver flirts with local women, Elio seethes with irritation, though he cannot articulate why. It is a slow, creeping obsession that begins to take hold, something nameless at first, lurking beneath the surface of casual glances and idle conversations. The villa itself is a world of its own, a place where time stretches and compresses in strange ways. Days blend into one another, marked only by the chime of the church bells or the sound of the gardener picking peaches in the orchard. The afternoons are languid, filled with books and music. The evenings punctuated by family dinners in the garden, where conversation drifts between languages, Italian, French, English, each word carrying its own weight, its own meaning. It is in these spaces, in the quiet, sunlit corners of the house, that Elio begins to notice the small things about Oliver. The way he rests his fingers on the table, the slight hesitation before he speaks, the way his shirt clings to his back when he emerges from the pool. Elio tries to push the thoughts away. He tells himself it is nothing, that he is simply intrigued by Oliver because he is different, because he is new. But then there are the moments that betray him, the way his breath catches when Oliver brushes past him, the electric charge of a passing touch. The feelings are unbidden, unwelcome even, but undeniable. One afternoon, as they sit in the shade of the pergola, Oliver casually massages his own shoulders, complaining about a knot in his back. Without thinking, without allowing himself time to second guess, Elio reaches out and offers to help. His fingers press into Oliver's skin, and for the briefest moment, Oliver allows it. But then, as if suddenly aware of something unspoken between them, he pulls away. The moment passes, but it lingers. Elio finds himself becoming hyper-aware of every interaction, analyzing each exchange for hidden meaning. Is Oliver indifferent, or is he just careful? Does he notice Elio watching him? Does he see through the casual remarks, the practiced disinterest? Or is Elio simply imagining it all? The tension grows in small increments, in stolen glances and unspoken words. When Oliver places a hand on Elio's shoulder one evening at dinner, a simple, fleeting gesture, Elio feels it long after Oliver has moved away. when Oliver stretches out by the pool, absently tracing patterns in the condensation on his glass. Elio watches, transfixed. It is unbearable, this not knowing, this silent war between what he feels and what he can admit to himself. In the background, life continues as usual. The townspeople go about their daily routines. The tourists come and go. The fishermen haul in their morning catch. Elio's parents remain blissfully unaware of the turmoil unfolding inside him, or perhaps they simply choose not to see. His father is a man of wisdom and patience, perceptive in ways that Elio does not yet understand. His mother, elegant and enigmatic, carries her own unspoken history of love and loss, perhaps recognizing something of herself in her son. Then, one day, something shifts. It is a casual game of volleyball, a bright afternoon where Oliver is playing with the local boys while Elio watches from the shade. At one point, Oliver removes his shirt, tossing it aside, his skin bronzed by the summer sun. It is a simple, ordinary act, but for Elio, it is everything. A private revelation, a quiet catastrophe. He feels his pulse quicken, his breath catch. He looks away, forcing himself to focus on the book in his hands, but the words blur together. He knows then, with a certainty that terrifies him, that this feeling will not go away. That Oliver has entered his world in a way no one else ever has, or ever will. But what now? As the sun dips below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson, Elio finds himself standing at the edge of something vast and unknown. The summer is just beginning, but he already knows that nothing will be the same when it ends. And so, the waiting begins, the waiting for a sign, for something more than glances and gestures. The waiting to know if what he feels is real, or if he is simply another boy with a foolish, impossible longing. The summer stretches ahead, ripe with possibility. But for now, all Elio can do is wait. The summer unfolds like a slow burning fever, thick with tension and the unspoken weight of Elio's emotions. Days pass in a haze of heat, books, music, and the quiet rituals of life at the villa. Yet every moment feels charged, amplified, stretched taut between what is said and what remains unuttered. Elio watches Oliver constantly. It is no longer a conscious choice, but an instinct, a gravitational pull. Every movement Oliver makes, whether he's leaning over the breakfast table, standing at the water's edge, or brushing back his damp curls after a swim, feels unbearably significant. Elio tells himself it's just curiosity, a fascination with the way Oliver carries himself so effortlessly. But he knows, deep down, that it is more than that. He begins testing the boundaries between them, pushing and pulling, searching for something solid in the ambiguity of their interactions. Some days, Oliver is warm, playful, engaging in conversation that stretches long into the afternoons. Other days, he is distant, aloof, slipping away without explanation. It drives Elio mad. The inconsistency, the unpredictability. He wants clarity, something he can hold on to, yet he also fears what the answer might be. There are moments when Elio thinks he sees something in Oliver's eyes, some flicker of recognition, a brief hesitation that suggests he too is caught in the same unspoken current. But just as quickly, Oliver retreats, burying any possibility beneath his effortless nonchalance. Elio begins to wonder if he's imagining it all, if he is merely reading too much into gestures and silences. One evening, after dinner, Oliver and Elio find themselves walking through the gardens, the scent of jasmine thick in the air. The night is warm, the sky deep with stars, and for a moment, everything feels suspended, just the two of them, side by side, the sound of their footsteps blending into the rhythm of the cicadas. Elio wants to say something, anything, to crack open the space between them. He considers 100 different words, 1,000 different ways to broach the subject. But in the end, he settles for something safe, something that carries no real weight. "You must find it boring here," he says, keeping his tone casual. Oliver glances at him, his expression unreadable. "Not at all." Elio nods, pretending to be satisfied with the answer. But then Oliver does something unexpected. He reaches out and briefly squeezes Elio's shoulder before continuing to walk ahead. It is a fleeting touch, over almost before it begins, but it sends a jolt through Elio's entire body. He stops in his tracks, watching as Oliver disappears into the night, leaving Elio standing alone, his mind racing. What was that? A simple, friendly gesture, or something more? Elio becomes consumed with the need to decipher Oliver's actions, analyzing every glance, every accidental brush of skin, every inflection in his voice. He writes in his journal late at night, cataloging his thoughts, attempting to make sense of his own feelings. But there is no clarity to be found, only longing, restless, and insatiable. One afternoon, in a moment of impulsive recklessness, Elio decides to provoke Oliver, to test the limits of whatever exists between them. He watches from the terrace as Oliver sits by the pool, engrossed in a book. Elio waits until Oliver looks up, then stretches out in a deliberately languid way, letting his fingers trail absently along his own bare stomach, feigning indifference. He knows Oliver is watching. He can feel it. And then, Oliver closes his book and walks away. The rejection stings more than Elio wants to admit. He tries to tell himself it doesn't matter, that he was only playing a game. But the ache in his chest says otherwise. Elio spends the next few days avoiding Oliver, distancing himself as a form of self-protection. He throws himself into his music, his books, his daily swims. He tries to convince himself that he is over it, that whatever he thought he felt was just a passing fixation. But it's a lie, and he knows it. The universe seems determined to remind him of Oliver's presence. He hears his voice drifting through the house, sees him laughing with his mother over coffee, watches him walk into town with an ease that makes Elio feel both envious and invisible. It is unbearable, and yet Elio cannot look away. One evening, unable to stand the tension any longer, Elio writes a note. It is direct, almost too bold, but he is past the point of caution. He folds the paper carefully and, under the cover of darkness, leaves it on Oliver's desk. The next morning, the note is gone. No response, no acknowledgement, nothing. Elio is tormented by the silence, convinced he has made a fool of himself. He imagines Oliver reading the note and laughing, dismissing it as childish infatuation. The thought is unbearable. Then, as the day stretches into evening, Oliver finally speaks. They are alone on the terrace, the sky painted in hues of orange and pink. Oliver turns to Elio, his expression unreadable, and says, "You don't know what you're doing." Elio's heart pounds. He wants to argue, to insist that he does know, that he has never been more certain of anything in his life. But before he can find the words, Oliver stands, mutters later, and walks away. Elio is left with nothing but questions. What does that mean? Is it rejection? A warning, or something else entirely? That night, he lies awake in bed, his mind spinning. He replays every conversation, every glance, searching for hidden meaning. He wants an answer, but none comes. And yet, for the first time, he feels that something has shifted. Oliver has not dismissed him outright. He has not shut the door completely. There is something there, something just beneath the surface, waiting to be unearthed. Elio does not know what comes next. He only knows that he is willing to wait. And so the summer continues, thick with longing, charged with possibility. The days ahead hold the answer, but for now, Elio is left in the space between what has been said and what remains unspoken. The days stretch on, endless and heavy with the summer heat, yet Elio feels like he's suspended in time, caught between knowing and not knowing, between certainty and doubt. Oliver's words, "You don't know what you're doing," replay in his mind on an infinite loop. Was it a rejection, a warning, a test? Elio has no way of knowing, and the uncertainty gnaws at him. He tries to pretend nothing has changed, that he is not waiting for a moment of confirmation, for something, anything, to validate what he feels. But the truth is, he is always aware of Oliver. Even when he is not looking, he is aware. He notices the way Oliver's shirt clings to his back after swimming, the way he absently runs a hand through his hair when he's lost in thought, the way his fingers linger on the spine of a book as if absorbing its meaning through touch. Every movement, every glance, feels weighted with something unspeakable. And yet, Oliver remains unreadable. He is warm and engaging one moment, distant and reserved the next. One evening, he walks into town with a girl named Chiara, and though Elio tells himself he does not care, his chest tightens with something close to jealousy. He watches them from a distance, sees the way she laughs at something Oliver says, sees the way Oliver leans in slightly when he speaks. It is a small, insignificant thing, but to Elio, it is everything. That night, as the villa settles into its quiet hum, Elio finds himself wandering the darkened hallways, restless and aching. He passes by Oliver's room, pausing outside the door, listening for any sign of movement. The door is closed, and Elio does not knock. Instead, he presses his forehead against the wooden frame, as if hoping to absorb some trace of Oliver through it. The next morning, Oliver is as casual as ever, greeting Elio with a simple, "Hey," as he pours himself a glass of peach juice. Elio watches him, searching for any sign that Oliver spent the night thinking about him the way Elio thought about Oliver. But if Oliver is affected, he hides it well. Elio, on the other hand, is unraveling. He becomes reckless in small ways. He lets his fingers brush against Oliver's arm when handing him a book, stands too close when they are both reaching for the same plate at breakfast, lets his gaze linger just a second too long when Oliver is changing after a swim. Each moment is a silent question, a whisper, "Do you see me? Do you feel this too?" And then, one afternoon, something changes. They are alone in town, wandering through the cobbled streets beneath the blazing sun. They stop at a small cafe, ordering cold drinks, the condensation dripping down the sides of their glasses. The air is thick with the scent of citrus and sweat, and Elio feels lightheaded, not from the heat, but from being so close to Oliver without knowing what he is allowed to feel. Oliver watches him for a moment, then, as if making some unspoken decision, says, "What would you do if I kissed you?" The words send a shock through Elio's entire body. He feels the world tilt, feels his pulse hammering in his throat. He wants to respond, to say something clever or bold, but all words fail him. Instead, he does the only thing he can. He lowers his gaze, his lips parting slightly, his breath caught in his chest. Oliver studies him for a moment longer, then leans back in his chair with a sigh. See, you're not sure. Elio feels something inside him snap. I am sure, he says, his voice quieter than he intends. Oliver watches him carefully, then stands, tossing a few bills onto the table. Let's go. They walk through the town in silence, side by side but not touching. The air between them is charged, thick with something unspoken, and Elio knows that Oliver is testing him, waiting to see if he will close the distance. Elio doesn't. He wants to. He wants to reach for Oliver's hand, to say something that will make the moment irreversible. But fear holds him back. That night, he lies in bed, replaying every second of the afternoon in his mind. He wonders if he has lost his chance, if Oliver has decided that Elio is too unsure, too hesitant. The thought is unbearable. So, the next day, Elio decides to act. He finds Oliver in the garden, reading under the shade of a fig tree. For a moment, Elio just watches him, committing every detail to memory, the way the sunlight catches in his hair, the way he absently taps his fingers against the book's cover. Then, before he can overthink it, Elio walks over and sits down beside him. Oliver looks up, raising an eyebrow. What's up? Elio hesitates, then says, yesterday, at the cafe, he swallows hard. I would have let you. For the first time, Oliver seems caught off guard. He closes the book, studying Elio carefully. Would you let me now? Elio doesn't respond. He doesn't have to. Because this time, when Oliver leans in, Elio doesn't hesitate. The first touch of lips is tentative, barely there, a brush of breath and warmth. But then Oliver tilts his head, and suddenly, the hesitation is gone. The kiss deepens, slow and searching, and Elio feels as if he is sinking into Oliver, into the summer, into something too vast to name. When they finally pull apart, Oliver exhales a soft laugh. We shouldn't be doing this. Elio's heart is racing. Then why did you? Oliver smiles, shaking his head. Because I wanted to. For the first time all summer, Elio feels like he has found solid ground. They do not speak of it again, not immediately. The moment is tucked away between them, a secret shared in the shade of the fig tree. But Elio knows that everything has changed. The waiting is over, and the summer is just beginning. Elio spends the rest of the day in a daze, his mind replaying every second of the kiss beneath the fig tree. He can still feel Oliver's lips against his, still taste the faint traces of apricots and sun-warmed skin. It is as if the world has shifted, tilted slightly on its axis, and nothing feels quite the same anymore. And yet, despite the significance of what has happened, Oliver does not bring it up. The rest of the day carries on as if nothing has changed. They return to the house, eat dinner with the others, engage in polite conversation. Oliver laughs at something Elio's father says, leans back in his chair in that effortless way of his, and carries on as if the world is exactly as it was before. Elio doesn't know what to do with that. He had imagined things unfolding differently. Perhaps Oliver would have pulled him aside, whispered something meaningful, acknowledged what they had just begun. But instead, there is only silence. That night, Elio lies awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, his body thrumming with restlessness. He replays the kiss over and over in his mind, searching for answers in the way Oliver had touched him, in the way he had smiled afterward. He thinks of Oliver's words, "We shouldn't be doing this," and wonders if that was meant to be an ending before anything could even begin. But the next morning, when Elio passes Oliver on the way to the breakfast table, something happens. It is a small thing, so fleeting that it could be mistaken for nothing. As they cross paths in the hallway, Oliver's fingers graze against Elio's wrist, just a whisper of contact, barely there. But it is deliberate. Elio freezes, his breath catching in his throat. He glances up, searching Oliver's face for some sign of meaning, but Oliver is already walking away, his expression unreadable. Elio spends the rest of the morning in a haze of anticipation. He cannot concentrate on anything, his book, his music, the casual conversations that swirl around him. Every nerve in his body is attuned to Oliver, waiting for the next sign, the next brush of contact, the next unspoken acknowledgement of what is simmering between them. And then, just before lunch, Oliver makes his move. Elio is in the study, flipping absently through a book, when he hears the door click shut behind him. He turns, his heart pounding, and finds Oliver standing there watching him. For a long moment, neither of them speaks. Then Oliver crosses the room in 3 strides and kisses him. This time, there is no hesitation. The kiss is urgent, insistent, nothing like the tentative brush of lips beneath the fig tree. It is all heat and hunger, hands gripping, bodies pressing. Elio melts into it, gives himself over completely, his fingers curling into Oliver's shirt as if afraid to let go. When they finally break apart, Oliver exhales sharply, his forehead resting against Elio's. "We have to be careful," Oliver murmurs, his voice rough. Elio nods, though he doesn't know what careful means. He only knows that he does not want to stop. For the next few days, everything between them exists in a secret language of touches and glances, stolen moments and whispered words. They navigate the blurred lines between caution and recklessness, between restraint and surrender. They meet in hidden corners of the house, in the quiet hours of the early morning when the world is still asleep. One afternoon, they steal away to an abandoned part of the garden, hidden from view by overgrown hedges. Oliver presses Elio against the sun-warmed stone wall, his hands mapping the lines of Elio's body, his mouth tracing the curve of his jaw. "You're making me crazy," Oliver breathes against his skin. Elio shivers, tilting his head back, his fingers gripping Oliver's shoulders. It is intoxicating, the secrecy, the stolen moments, the way every touch feels like a forbidden thrill. But it is also maddening, because outside of these hidden encounters, they must pretend. In the presence of others, Oliver is the same as he has always been, charming, confident, unattainable. He jokes with Elio's father, flirts casually with Chiara, moves through the world with the same ease as before. And Elio must act as if none of it bothers him. But it does. One evening, at a small gathering in town, Elio watches from across the room as Oliver laughs at something Chiara says, his hand resting lightly on the small of her back. It is a casual touch, meaningless, but to Elio, it feels like a knife to the ribs. Jealousy coils in his stomach, sharp and bitter. He does not say anything to Oliver that night, but the silence between them stretches tight with unspoken words. Then, just before they return home, Oliver pulls Elio aside, his hand warm against the small of his back. "I only want you," he murmurs, so quietly that no one else can hear. The words should soothe Elio, should erase the doubt gnawing at him. And yet, they don't. Because wanting is not the same as having, and summer is slipping away too quickly. Elio tries to hold on to Oliver's whispered words. "I only want you." He repeats them in his head like a mantra, as if they alone can keep his anxieties at bay. But no matter how many times he replays them, they are not enough to silence the doubts gnawing at him. Because wanting someone and claiming them are not the same thing. The days stretch long and hazy, golden hours melting into one another. The air is thick with heat, cicadas buzzing in the distance, the scent of ripe fruit lingering in the air. It is the kind of summer that feels endless, and yet Elio knows better. Every moment with Oliver feels precious and fleeting, slipping through his fingers like water. And Oliver does not make things easy. He is still Oliver, the same carefree, charming, maddeningly enigmatic presence that he has been since the day he arrived. In public, he remains distant, offering no indication that anything between them has changed. He still laughs easily, still drapes his arm around Chiara's shoulder without a second thought, still moves through the world as if untouched by the same turmoil that keeps Elio awake at night. But in private, it is different. At night, when the house is quiet and the others have gone to bed, they find each other. Elio learns to recognize the signals, a glance held too long across the dinner table, the subtle way Oliver's fingers trail over his wrist as he passes, the moments when his breath hitches just slightly, betraying something beneath his composed exterior. It is in these moments that Oliver pulls him close, whispers his name like a secret, presses him against the cool stone walls of the garden as their mouths collide in the dark. It is thrilling, it is dangerous, and it is never enough. Elio wants more. He wants Oliver in the daylight, not just in stolen shadows. He wants Oliver to look at him with the same intensity when others are around, wants to reach for him without hesitation, without the fear of being seen. But that is not how Oliver operates. Elio doesn't know how much longer he can keep playing this game. One afternoon, they escape to a secluded spot by the river, hidden away from the world. The water is cool against their sun-warmed skin as they swim, their laughter echoing through the trees. For a little while, it feels like they are the only two people on Earth, free from everything outside of this moment. But even here, the weight of reality lingers. As they lie on the riverbank, their bodies stretched out on the warm grass, Elio turns to Oliver. "Do you ever think about what happens after this?" he asks. Oliver doesn't respond right away. He is staring at the sky, one arm draped over his forehead, as if shielding himself from the question. Then, finally, he sighs. "What do you mean?" Elio hesitates. He is afraid of the answer, but he needs to ask. "When summer ends," he says quietly. Oliver is silent for a long time. Then he turns to face Elio, his expression unreadable. "I don't know," he admits. It is not the answer Elio wants, but it is the only one Oliver is willing to give. And maybe that is the problem. That night, Elio cannot sleep. He stares at the ceiling, his chest tight with frustration, longing, uncertainty. He thinks of Oliver's hesitation, of the way he never speaks about the future. He thinks of how quickly time is running out. And then, suddenly, he cannot take it anymore. He throws back the covers, his feet hitting the cool floor as he moves toward the door. He does not think, does not second-guess himself. He simply follows the pull in his chest, the force that has been leading him to Oliver from the start. The house is silent as he slips through the hallway, past the closed doors of his sleeping family. When he reaches Oliver's room, he does not knock. He pushes the door open and steps inside. Oliver is awake. He is sitting on the edge of the bed, his elbows resting on his knees, as if he too has been caught in the same restless spiral of thoughts. His eyes flick up when he sees Elio, and for a moment, neither of them moves. Then Elio crosses the room and kisses him. It is different this time. There is no hesitation, no uncertainty, no fear. There is only urgency, desperation, the feeling of two people grasping onto something they know they cannot keep. Oliver pulls him onto the bed, his hands threading through Elio's hair, his breath warm against his skin. They move together in the darkness, the space between them vanishing until there is nothing left but this. Elio does not think about tomorrow. For now, this is enough. Morning comes too soon. Elio stirs before the sun has fully risen, his body still tangled with Oliver's beneath the sheets. For a moment, he does not move, afraid that any slight shift will break the spell, will remind them both that reality exists beyond this room. The night had been everything, unfiltered, unrestrained, as if all the tension, all the longing that had built between them had finally been given permission to spill over. Oliver is still asleep, his chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm, one arm draped loosely over Elio's waist. The sight of him like this, unguarded, peaceful, makes Elio's heart ache. He wants to reach out, trace the curve of Oliver's jaw, press his lips to his forehead. He wants to capture this moment, hold onto it forever. But he knows he can't, because forever has never been an option. The thought makes something tighten inside him, a dull pressure building behind his ribs. He carefully shifts away, moving just enough to sit up on the edge of the bed. His fingers graze over Oliver's shirt, which is crumpled on the floor beside the bed, and he lets out a slow breath. He should go. The house is still quiet. If he leaves now, no one will notice. He can slip back into his own room, pretend he never spent the night here, pretend that things are still as they were before. But then he feels Oliver stir behind him. A hand, warm and heavy with sleep, rests on his lower back. Elio closes his eyes. "Where are you going?" Oliver's voice is thick, drowsy. Elio swallows, his throat tight. "I don't know." There is a pause. Then the bed shifts, and before Elio can react, Oliver's arms wrap around him from behind, pulling him back down. "Don't go yet," Oliver murmurs against his skin. And just like that, Elio surrenders. He lets himself be drawn back into the warmth of Oliver's embrace, lets himself forget, if only for a little while, that time is running out. But time does not care about lovers. Time moves forward, indifferent to the people who wish to hold it still. And by the afternoon, reality is already creeping in. Elio cannot ignore it anymore. He knows what is coming. The first real blow lands at lunch, when Oliver casually mentions that he will be leaving in a few weeks. The words slip out easily, as if they are no more significant than a comment about the weather. He says it in front of everyone, Elio's parents, their guests, giving Elio no opportunity to react, no time to process what has just been said. And yet, everything inside him recoils. Oliver is leaving. Of course, Elio has always known this. The nature of Oliver's stay had never been permanent. But hearing it spoken aloud, hearing it acknowledged as an inevitable truth, makes it feel real in a way that it hadn't before. His father nods, offering polite conversation, asking about Oliver's plans once he returns home. His mother smiles, suggesting that Oliver must be excited to reunite with his family and friends. No one sees the way Elio grips his fork too tightly, how his pulse hammers against his skin. He does not say a word, but Oliver must sense. It must feel the shift in Elio's demeanor, the tension that coils beneath his quiet exterior. Because later, when they are alone, Oliver turns to him and says softly, "We should talk." Elio does not want to talk. Talking will only make it worse. Talking will put words to something that he is not yet ready to acknowledge. But Oliver does not wait for permission. "You knew this was going to happen," he says gently. "I have to go back." Elio swallows hard. He knows Oliver is not trying to hurt him. He knows this has always been the reality of their situation. But knowing does not make it easier. "And then what?" Elio asks. "We pretend this never happened," Oliver exhales, running a hand through his hair. "No," he says, "I could never pretend." But he does not offer any solutions either. He does not promise to stay. And Elio cannot bring himself to ask him to. The days that follow are heavier, weighted by the unspoken truth of what is coming. And yet, they do not pull away. If anything, the knowledge that they are running out of time makes them cling to each other even more. They steal moments whenever they can, refusing to waste a single second. They take long bike rides through the countryside, their laughter carried by the wind. They swim in the river, the water cool against their sun-heated skin. At night, they meet in secret, seeking solace in the dark. But no matter how many times Oliver whispers, "I want you," no matter how tightly Elio holds on, it is not enough to stop the inevitable. One evening, as they sit on the balcony, watching the last traces of sunlight fade from the sky, Elio finally asks the question that has been clawing at his chest. "Do you think you'll ever come back?" Oliver does not answer right away. Then, finally, he says, "I don't know." Elio nods, pressing his lips together, trying to keep his expression unreadable. But Oliver sees through him, of course he does. Oliver reaches out, his fingers ghosting over Elio's hand. "I don't want to leave you." Elio wants to believe him, but wanting and reality are not the same thing. And reality has already been decided. That night, as Elio lies in bed, he stares at the ceiling and wonders how something that had felt so infinite could now feel so fragile. He had never imagined loving someone like this, had never imagined how much it could consume him, how much it could hurt. But he does not regret it. No matter what happens, no matter how this ends, he knows he will never regret Oliver. Because some loves are meant to burn bright, even if they cannot last. Time is slipping through Elio's fingers. Each day brings him closer to the inevitable. And no matter how tightly he tries to hold on, he can feel it, the slow unraveling, the way the summer is folding in on itself, making way for what comes next. Oliver's departure is no longer some abstract future event. It is wait now. It has a date. By the end of the month, he will be gone. Elio does not know how to exist with this knowledge. He tries to keep it buried, tries to convince himself that they still have time, that there are still moments left to claim. But even the air between them has changed. He can feel it in the way Oliver looks at him, something softer, something sadder. A silent acknowledgement that they are living inside a countdown. And yet, they do not speak of it. Not in the mornings, when they wake tangled together, the sunlight creeping through the shutters. Not in the afternoons, when they ride their bikes down winding country roads, their laughter chasing after them. Not in the evenings, when Oliver's hands find him in the dark, his touch both urgent and reverent, as if memorizing the shape of him. They act as if nothing is changing, but everything is. One evening, Oliver suggests they take a trip together. "Just for a few days," he says. "Let's go somewhere, just us." Elio hesitates, not because he doesn't want to, but because the idea of leaving home with Oliver, of stepping outside the world they have built here, feels too big, too final. "Where?" he asks. "Rome." The name sits between them, heavy with possibility. Elio swallows. "Okay." The journey to Rome feels like stepping into another life. They board a train in the early morning, the landscape rushing past them in a blur of golden fields and distant hills. The further they travel, the lighter Oliver seems to become, as if leaving their little town has freed him from something. Elio watches him from across the seat, the way he stretches his legs out, the way he tilts his head back against the window, eyes closed, a small, secret smile playing on his lips. It is a strange thing to be with Oliver in this way, in transit, in motion, moving toward something unknown. For the first time, Elio allows himself to imagine a different version of their story. One where Oliver does not leave at the end of the summer. One where they could stay in this moment forever, traveling from place to place, waking up in unfamiliar cities, existing only for each other. But that is not their story. Their story has an ending, and it is coming fast. Rome is electric. The city hums with life, the streets filled with a constant, thrumming energy. It is nothing like their quiet town, nothing like the slow, sun-drenched days of their summer together. Here, everything moves quickly. The nights are loud and endless, and Elio finds himself swept up in it all. They spend their days wandering through ancient ruins, getting lost in narrow streets, drinking espresso at small cafes where no one knows them. At night, they find themselves in the company of artists and poets, strangers who welcome them without question, who speak in passionate bursts of Italian and fill the air with music and laughter. And Oliver thrives in it. He is charming, effortless, slipping into conversations as if he has always belonged here. Elio watches as he laughs with their new friends, watches the way people are drawn to him, the way he commands attention without even trying. For a moment, Elio wonders if this is what Oliver's life will be like when he leaves, if he will move through the world this easily, collecting new places, new people, while Elio remains behind. The thought makes something twist inside him. That night in their hotel room, Elio turns to Oliver. "Do you ever think about what this could have been?" he asks. Oliver looks at him, something flickering in his eyes. "What do you mean?" Elio hesitates. Then, softly, "If things were different." Oliver is quiet for a long time. When he finally speaks, his voice is almost a whisper. "I think about it all the time." The confession steals the air from Elio's lungs. Oliver reaches for him, his hands gentle, tracing over Elio's skin like he is memorizing him. "You'll never know how much I want you," Oliver murmurs. "How much I wish." He stops himself, shaking his head. "But we can't." Elio closes his eyes. He does not want to hear this. Not now. Not when they still have time. So he kisses Oliver before he can say anything else. And for the rest of the night, they do not speak at all. The next morning, they wake to the sound of church bells ringing in the distance. The light streaming through the window is soft, golden, casting long shadows across the sheets. Oliver is already awake, watching him. Elio swallows. "What?" Oliver smiles, but it does not reach his eyes. "Nothing." But it is not nothing. Elio can feel it. The end is coming. And there is nothing he can do to stop it. The train ride home is quieter than the one that took them to Rome. Elio watches Oliver from across the seat, watches the way his fingers drum lightly against the edge of the window, the way his gaze stays fixed on the passing landscape, as if he's trying to memorize it. Neither of them speaks much. It is not an uncomfortable silence, but it is heavy, laden with all the words they are not saying, all the thoughts they are too afraid to voice. Elio wishes he could stop time, stretch these final days into something infinite. But the closer they get to home, the more the weight of reality presses down on him. Oliver is leaving soon, and this time, there is no pretending otherwise. Their return feels different, as if the air itself has shifted. Elio's mother greets them warmly, asks about their trip, smiles when Oliver tells her how beautiful Rome was. His father sits with them in the garden, listening, nodding, letting the conversation flow around him. To everyone else, nothing has changed. But Elio feels it. He feels it in the way Oliver's touches are a little more lingering, in the way his eyes follow Elio when he thinks no one is watching. They are both trying to hold on, but the days are slipping away, one by one. One afternoon, Elio's father asks him to sit with him in the study. There is something in his expression, something knowing, as if he has seen everything and understands without needing to be told. Elio hesitates but obeys. For a long moment, his father says nothing. He simply looks at Elio as if weighing his words. Then finally he speaks. "You two had a beautiful friendship." Elio's breath catches. His father leans back in his chair, thoughtful. "Maybe more than a friendship, and I envy you." Elio says nothing. He does not know what to say. His father sighs, a soft, knowing sound. "You're too young to know how rare it is what you had, but don't push it away." Elio's throat is tight. His father continues, his voice gentle. "Most people, when they come so close to something like this, they kill it, because it makes them uncomfortable. But you," he shakes his head, smiling slightly, "you've been lucky." Elio swallows hard, his hands clenched in his lap. "I may have come close once," his father adds, a quiet confession, "but I never had what you have." For the first time, Elio looks at his father, really looks at him, and he understands. His father knows, he has always known, and he is telling Elio that it is okay to grieve this, to feel the full weight of it. "If there is pain," he says, "nurse it, don't kill it, and don't be in a hurry to feel nothing." Elio nods, unable to speak, but something in him shifts. Because this is not just his pain to carry. This kind of love, this kind of ache has existed before him, and it will exist long after. That night, Elio finds Oliver by the pool. The sky is dark, the water reflecting the glow of the house lights. Oliver is sitting on the edge, his feet skimming the surface, lost in thought. Elio joins him, settling beside him without a word. For a moment, they just sit there, side by side, their shoulders barely touching. Then Oliver exhales, looking down at the water. "You know I have to go," Elio nods. "I know," Oliver hesitates. "I don't want to." Elio turns to him, his chest tight. "Then stay." Oliver gives him a sad smile. "You know I can't." Elio clenches his jaw, looking away. He had known this from the start. He had known that Oliver was never his to keep, but knowing does not make it hurt any less. Oliver shifts closer, pressing his forehead against Elio's temple. "We had a good summer, didn't we?" Elio squeezes his eyes shut. A good summer. As if that is all this was. As if this they could ever be contained in something so small. But he does not correct him, because in the end, what else is there to say? So instead, he leans into Oliver's touch, and for the rest of the night, they hold on to each other, even as everything else slips away. The morning of Oliver's departure is quiet. There is no grand farewell, no dramatic goodbyes, just the low murmur of voices in the house, the sound of suitcases being carried to the car, the clinking of breakfast plates in the kitchen. Elio stands by the doorway, watching as Oliver checks his bags one last time. The room feels different now, emptier somehow, as if the air itself has shifted to accommodate the absence that is about to come. Neither of them speaks. There is too much to say, and yet no words seem right. Elio wants to memorize everything, the way Oliver's shirt clings to his shoulders, the way his hands move, the way the light catches in his hair. He wants to press pause, to stretch this moment out, to make it last. But time is moving forward, and Oliver is leaving. A car horn sounds from the driveway. Oliver exhales. "I guess this is it." Elio nods, his throat too tight to speak. They step outside together. Elio's parents are already waiting, offering warm but brief goodbyes. His mother hugs Oliver, wishing him well, and his father shakes his hand, nodding in quiet understanding. And then Oliver turns to Elio. For a long moment, they just stand there, looking at each other. This is the moment where Elio could say something, where he could ask Oliver to stay, could tell him that this summer has changed everything, that he cannot imagine a world where Oliver is not here. But he does not, because what would be the point? They both know that some things cannot be changed, no matter how much they wish otherwise. Oliver reaches out, his hand brushing briefly over Elio's shoulder. It is such a small gesture, but Elio feels it everywhere. Later, Oliver says softly, not goodbye, not take care, just later. As if there is still time, as if there is still a chance. Elio nods. Later. And then Oliver gets in the car. Elio watches as the vehicle pulls away, watches as it disappears down the road, watches until there is nothing left to see. He does not move. He does not cry. He just stands there, staring at the empty space where Oliver used to be. The house feels different without him. It is not just the absence of his voice, his laughter, the warmth he carried with him. It is something deeper, something harder to define. Elio walks through the rooms, through the garden, through the places they once shared. Everything looks the same, but nothing feels the same. The summer is ending, and Oliver is gone. That night, Elio calls his name out loud, softly at first, just to see how it feels. Oliver. And then again, louder this time, Oliver. The house does not answer. The walls do not echo it back. Elio presses his face into his hands. And for the first time since Oliver left, he lets himself cry. A few months pass. The leaves change color. The air grows colder. Elio moves through the days and a days, carrying Oliver's absence with him everywhere. He does not talk about it, does not try to explain it to anyone, but it is always there. One afternoon, while his parents are out, the phone rings. Elio almost does not answer, but something, some instinct, some pull makes him pick up. He presses the receiver to his ear, breath caught in his throat. And then, Elio, the world tilts. It is Oliver. His voice is exactly as Elio remembers, warm and sure and steady. For a moment, Elio cannot speak. He grips the phone tighter, afraid that if he blinks, this will all disappear. Oliver chuckles softly on the other end. Are you there? Elio swallows. I'm here, a pause, and then, I miss you. The words hit Elio like a punch to the chest. Because he has wanted to hear them for so long. And yet, they change nothing. He lets out a shaky breath. I miss you too, Oliver sighs. I wanted to call. I wasn't sure if I should. Elio closes his eyes. I'm glad you did. Another silence stretches between them, filled with all the things they cannot say. And then Oliver speaks again. I'm getting married. Elio feels the words before he fully understands them. Something sharp, something deep, something that makes his breath catch. He forces himself to keep his voice steady. Oh, Oliver exhales as if bracing himself. Yeah, there is no anger in Elio, no resentment, just an ache, vast and unshakable. He wants to be happy for Oliver. He wants to say congratulations, to ask about the woman, to pretend this does not feel like the final confirmation of what he already knew. But he cannot. So instead, he asks the only question that matters. Does she know? Oliver hesitates. And in that hesitation, Elio has his answer. Oliver does not say no, but he does not say yes either. They are quiet for a long time, and then finally, Oliver clears his throat. Do you remember how much I wanted you? Elio's chest tightens. I remember everything. Oliver sighs. Me too. For a moment, it feels like the summer is right there between them, alive again, waiting for them to reach out and take it. But the past is the past, and Oliver is getting married, so Elio does what he knows he must. He lets him go. "Goodbye, Oliver." Oliver is silent for a second. Then, softly, "Goodbye, Elio." The line goes dead. Elio stands there, holding the phone, his heart beating too fast, too hard. And then, very quietly, he whispers his name one last time. "Oliver." The house does not answer. And this time, he does not expect it to. Winter settles over the house like a quiet hush. The summer that once felt endless is now just a memory, lingering in the corners of Elio's mind like the scent of something long faded. The days are shorter, the sun weaker, casting long shadows across the garden where he and Oliver once lay. The villa, once filled with laughter and warmth, now feels colder, quieter. Elio moves through the rooms, through the hallways, through the places where Oliver had been, and with every step, he feels the ache of his absence. He wonders if Oliver thinks of him, if in the middle of the night he ever wakes up and reaches out, expecting Elio to be there. If he ever calls his name under his breath, the way Elio still calls his. But the days pass, and Oliver does not return. And Elio learns, slowly, that some loves exist only in a single season. The first snowfall comes in December. Elio watches from his window as the garden is blanketed in white, as the trees bend under the weight of it. It is beautiful, but it is not the same. He thinks of the summer, the golden light, the scent of peaches in the air, the warmth of Oliver's skin under his fingertips. And he realizes, with a dull kind of pain, that it is gone. Not just Oliver. The version of himself that existed in those months, that boy, with his sun-kissed skin and his heart wide open, is gone too. In his place stands someone else. Someone older. Someone who has loved and lost and will never be the same again. One afternoon, Elio is helping his father organize books in his study when he finds it. A postcard slipped between the pages of an old philosophy book. It is from Oliver. Elio recognizes the handwriting instantly, the way his letters slant slightly to the right, the way his O's are always a little too round. He traces his fingers over the words, his heart pounding. It is not long, just a few lines. "I saw a tree today that reminded me of the one near your house. The one where we sat that night. Do you remember?" Elio swallows hard. Of course he remembers. That was the night Oliver had whispered, "Call me by your name and I'll call you by mine." Elio's fingers tighten around the paper. There is no signature, no closing remark, just that single quiet memory sent across time and distance like a whisper. Elio exhales, and for the first time in months, he lets himself smile, because Oliver remembers too. The years pass. Elio grows older. He travels. He studies music in Rome, then in Paris. He meets people, falls into fleeting romances, but none of them ever feel quite real. Because no matter where he goes, a part of him is still 17, still standing in the heat of that summer, waiting for Oliver to come back. One day, years later, Elio is back at the villa for winter. It is the holidays, and the house is filled with guests, with voices and laughter and the clinking of wine glasses. And then his father calls him into the study. "Someone's on the phone for you." Elio frowns. "Who?" His father smiles, a small, knowing smile. "Just take it." Elio walks to the phone, his heart already beating faster, his fingers cold as he lifts the receiver. "Hello," and then, "Elio." It is Oliver. Elio closes his eyes. It has been years since they last spoke. Years since that phone call, since Oliver told him he was getting married. Elio's voice is barely a whisper. "Oliver." Oliver chuckles softly on the other end, but there is something wistful in it. "How are you?" Elio does not know how to answer, Because how is he supposed to sum up all these years? How is he supposed to tell Oliver that he has carried him with him every single day? So instead, he says simply, "I'm okay," Oliver sighs. "I've thought about calling you so many times." Elio swallows hard. "Why now?" A pause, then, "Because I miss you." Elio exhales, gripping the phone tighter. Oliver's voice is quieter now. "Do you still remember me?" Elio presses his forehead against the wall, closing his eyes. "I remember everything." Oliver does not respond right away. When he finally speaks, his voice is thick with something unspoken. "I'm coming to Italy next summer. We should see each other." Elio nods, even though Oliver cannot see him. "Okay." Another silence stretches between them, filled with memories, with longing, with everything they have never been able to say. And then Oliver whispers, just as he did all those years ago, "Call me by your name." Elio's throat tightens, but he smiles, because some loves never truly fade, and some names are never forgotten. Love, memory, and time, these are the forces that shape Call Me By Your Name. Elio and Oliver's story is more than just a fleeting summer romance. It is a testament to the way some loves never truly leave us, how they embed themselves in our bones, in our thoughts, in the spaces between ordinary moments. Theirs is a love that is both transformative and melancholic, one that does not follow the rules of permanence, but instead lingers, unspoken, unresolved, yet always present. André Aciman masterfully captures the raw intensity of first love, the kind that is all-consuming, the kind that makes the world sharper, brighter, more alive. Through Elio's introspective narration, we are drawn into the depths of his longing, his desire, his heartache. We feel his joy in Oliver's presence and his devastation in his absence. We understand the torment of wanting something so desperately and knowing, even in the moment, that it may never be his to keep. But what makes Call Me By Your Name so profoundly moving is not just the love story itself. It is what that love leaves behind. Elio does not simply move on. He carries Oliver with him across years, across distances. Their summer becomes a defining moment in his life, a memory that remains untouched by time. The ache of love lost does not fade, but neither does the beauty of what once was. In the end, the novel leaves us with a quiet but undeniable truth. Some people mark us forever. We may grow older. We may build new lives. We may fall in love again. But there will always be that one person, that one summer, that one name whispered in the silence of our hearts. And when we close this book, we do not just remember Elio and Oliver's story. We remember our own. Because Call Me By Your Name is not just a novel. It is an echo of every love that has ever changed us, of every moment that has ever made us feel truly alive. It is a story of first love. And first love, as we all know, never really fades.